Good afternoon, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, although I have to say it's with some trepidation that I stand in front of you. I arrived last night and we were wonderfully looked after. I was picked up from the airport, I was taken to a beautiful hotel, we put up in the hotel, and there was a dinner for the speakers. And I had the misfortune of sitting next to your first speaker this morning, Paul Redmond. I'm going to go inside the mind of the audience, and I think he did that rather well too. The difference is that he's actually done loads of research and he's got an ology. All I have is a little bit of applied common sense. So I was sharing this quandary with some fellow speakers who are on after me in the car coming over this morning. With Rick Stainton, in fact, I said, I'm really worried because it sounds like Paul's going to be amazing and he's done all this research and he actually knows what he's talking about. And then I've got to follow on a little bit afterwards and talk about a linked topic. And I don't know what I'm going to do. And Rick turned around to me and he said, look, I think you're going to be fine with this, Chris. I mean, not knowing what you're talking about after really knowledgeable people talk, you do that all the time. You'll be fine. So thanks, Rick, for that vote of confidence. I'm going to be doing a session, and I want to declare something up front. The session has sort of two concepts in it. The first one is effective selling, and the second one is inside the mind of the audience. Now, I run an organisation which specialises in audience engagement. So what I'm going to tell you is some lessons that we've learned about getting inside the mind of the audience. Happily, I think that some of the concepts that I'll be sharing with you today, you can really apply if you are in a sales role and you're talking with customers, and you'll see what I mean in a little bit. But if it's okay with you, I'm going to start with what happens inside a conference room, how we get inside of the mind of that audience, and then I'm going to ask you to apply how those lessons might work when you're working with your customers. Is that all right? Does everyone feel like they're in the right session? Get rich quick is next door, if anyone wanted to do that. Okay, I notice you're really spread out. It's an interactive session. I'm going to be asking you to talk to your neighbour. So the lady sitting there, 5 seats from anyone, well done. Anyone else who finds themselves sitting bizarrely far away from anyone else, please just tuck in together. Don't worry, don't be shy. The row, where are we? Caroline, yeah. Why don't you kind of shift across, bring your neighbour with you, and let's huddle up and make sure we can interact. Now, when we get into the session, we're going to be using this technology that you have in your hands. You've heard quite a lot about mobile apps. You've heard about the importance of technology, and you've heard about the importance of engagement. So you're going to be using the iPad minis that you were given at the door to interact with each other and to interact with me. Okay, but can we just make one thing clear? Those are my iPads, all of them. They're my iPads. So please can you make sure that if you remember only one thing from today, it's to hand them in when you go out of the door at the end of this session. Okay, so let's get going. Let's get ourselves familiar with that technology first. And what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to use this app to share with me, please, the strangest thing that has happened to you in a conference. Now, I'm going to explain how that works first, but in a moment. But before I do it, I'm just going to share with you the strangest thing that happened to me at a conference, and I was reminded of it by Claire, who came today. And you could tell that Claire was an events professional. Did you notice? She came over, she'd already clocked the lectern, she knew that she was going to be standing behind it, so she'd organised for a step to be put behind the lectern so she could stand on it so that we could all see her clearly. And I was sitting at the back, and I was the one who whooped when she said, can you all see me? I went, yeah, you clever thing. Good idea for putting that step there, because one of my clients, when they came and opened their great big customer conference with 500 people, also had a massive lectern and was so small that they opened the conference like this. If you're wondering where the noise is coming from, I'm behind the lectern. So that's the strangest thing that happened to me in a conference. I'm over to you now to tell me the strangest thing that happened. I'm going to ask you to brainstorm your ideas. We're going to share them on the screen. It's completely anonymous, so please can I ask you to keep this clean. To type in your ideas, you're going to tap on the brainstorm button on the home screen. Anyone who can't see that brainstorm button on the home screen, you've obviously been fiddling and you've broken the iPad. I've got Roylan over there and Caroline over there. Put your hands up and they'll come and help you. And I promise I won't assume you're asking me a question and I won't stop my presentation. So if you've got any problems, but tap on the brainstorm button. In there, it'll take you to this. Some of you have already started. Tap in the light blue blocks at the top. Type in the strangest thing that's happened to you and then press on submit and it will share your idea with the rest of the audience. So let's take a moment to do that now, please. So let me tell you what we're going to cover in this session. Okay, so what I want to work with you on is to find a way of designing events that are fit for purpose, bearing in mind the different needs and preferences of your audience. That's what I'm going to be working with you on. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to meet our audience, okay, and get into the minds of the different types of people who attend events, okay? I've also got some research, thankfully, after Paul sharing his research with us, I've also got some research that we have put together based on analysing over 10,000 end-of-session evaluations for people who attended conferences that we've supported. So there's a few interesting and simple lessons to pull out of that. And then finally, we're going to work together to see if we can take what we've learned about the different personality types that I'm going to introduce you to, and then after that I've introduced you to, and see if we can apply what we've learned to improving the events that we design for our participants. But in order to do that, I need to get you into a scenario. I need a concept that we can start to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain a conference that might be happening in one of your venues, and I'm going to ask you to design an agenda which will fit with that conference. Okay? So let me give you the scenario, and there's nothing I've worked on. I hope no one here has worked on it and feel I've pinched their good work, but I'm going to give you a situation. And imagine a situation where you were bringing together the top 300 people for an organization that was facing a significant challenge. Okay, and let's take as an example of an organization that's facing significant challenge as BlackBerry, the phone manufacturer. Okay, so imagine getting the 300 people from the most senior people from BlackBerry together in a room. They're going to do a conference together, and we need to put an agenda together which helps them to recognize the challenges that they face and gives them confidence in facing those challenges in the future. Okay? So what I'd like you to do is just to turn to your partner, and I'd like you to discuss something that might go in the agenda. So let me start with an obvious one. I imagine the CEO is going to do a keynote address. Okay, so let's assume that that's happening. But outside of the CEO doing a keynote address, what are some of the things you would expect to see on an agenda for this group which would help them to acknowledge the challenges that they face and giving them confidence to face those challenges in the future? If you take a minute, please, turn to your neighbour and let's come up with some ideas.
Okay, so I'm going to come into the audience. I'm not sure I can hear you from up there. So who would like to share with us the first idea for something that we could do in this conference for our BlackBerry execs? We've got one here.
I think the first thing that needs to be done is to have the individuals define the problem.
Okay, and what would that look like? Would that be the individuals, the 300? So would that be a workshop where they're identifying problems? Okay, great, thank you. So a workshop to identify the problems, so the 300 people feel that it's their problem, they're not just being told about it by the CEO. Okay, so there's one idea. Any other ideas? Who else had an idea for something? Yeah?
Some case studies?
Case studies of other companies who've... Okay, so case studies of other companies who've managed to overcome this challenge. We must have been to the same conference, I think. Anyone else got any other ideas? Yeah.
Presentation from Apple.
Yeah, good. Thanks for that. Should we combine that with case studies? What about something a little bit more creative, a bit more lateral, a bit more experiential? We've got two, I'd say, good kind of information-rich kind of analytical things. Who had something a little bit more experiential?
Maybe an innovation workshop.
Okay, an innovation workshop, maybe get someone who's a bit of a leader in innovation to stimulate thoughts. Okay, great. And who else has got something really further out even than that, if you wouldn't mind? I'm going to pass this microphone over.
Ask your customers. Sorry, get some customer input.
Okay, great. So bring your customers on stage and get their perspective. Fantastic. Anyone else have something further out than that? Good. Okay, over the other side. I'm walking all the way around. You're not going to say a presentation from Apple, are you? No.
Get some young folks, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds there for them point of view.
Okay, so get 15 and 16-year-olds to give their perspective on BlackBerry. That's a nice idea. Okay, so that gives us, I'm going to bring that to 4, if that's okay with you. That's going to give us 4 agenda activities that our BlackBerry execs are going to, our BlackBerry managers are going to go through. So the first thing is an issues workshop. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is case studies. The third one is an innovation workshop. And then the fourth one is input from young people. Let's call it that, okay? So input from young people. Okay, so I'm just checking with my team back there. Stephen, did you get those okay? Fantastic, okay, I've got a thumbs up. So that's the agenda, and we're going to kind of come back to that and critique that agenda in a moment. But first, I want to share with you a model of one way of thinking about the audience, and this is the bit that, in my experience, works really nicely when thinking about sales as well. And the model is one. We've done that bit. Okay, so the model is one that effectively splits your audience into four different personalities or four different character profiles, and I'm trying to bring those to life a little bit for you. So meet the first person who might be sitting in your audience. She's called Claire Conscientious. Her strengths are that she's an analyzer and an organizer. And when you meet Claire, you just get that feeling that if you ask for it to be done, it'll get done. Anyone know anyone like this? Yep. Okay, so someone who is good at detail, follows through, absolutely dependable. Does anyone know what happens to this person when they're under stress, when they're pushed further than they can handle? Anyone know? Don't worry, it's nothing bad. They don't set fire to your house or anything like that. No. What happens is that they continue to use exactly the process that they know works, but the trouble is when they're under stress and they've got too much work, they just keep going at the same pace with the same level of thoroughness. And if you find you're working with someone, or you're maybe liaising with a client, and you find that they just don't seem to want to accelerate, they almost seem to be slowing down and dragging their heels and being even more thorough than they were before, then you're probably working with a Claire Conscientious. The most important thing for her is to make sure that she delivers what she said she set out to deliver. Okay? I'm going to introduce three more, and I should say, when you look at these character profiles, you may start to identify something in yourselves and say, oh, there's a bit of me in that. And that might trigger two reactions. It certainly did with me. One is, oh, that's why I do it like that. And the other one is a kind of, oh, am I really like that? A little bit of uncomfort. So don't worry, we'll all be uncomfortable in this together. Believe me, I've been through this. So the first person that we meet is Claire Conscientious. Here's the second one, and the second one is called Tommy Team, and he is the hardest for me to pin down. Tommy is one of those people who would forsake the overall goal of a project if he felt that the cohesiveness of the team was being compromised. So the worst thing that you can do with Tommy is to just tell him to do it and just tell him to bully his teammates to do it, because that's not what he's about. He's quite a lateral thinker, but he's really sensitive about the team, how it coheres. That's really important to him. Okay, so that's Tommy. Here's the third person. This is Mary Maverick, and Mary Maverick is one of those people. Let me tell you a couple of things about Mary that I've noticed. One is when you meet them in your professional life, you think, how did you get to your job? How did you get that high that quickly? And if you're Claire Conscientious, you really are left scratching your head, okay? Because this is someone who just seems to make stuff happen. Things just happen around them. People seem to go an extra mile if they're working in Mary's team. This is someone who really is a rainmaker, as some people describe. Okay, a little bit of a maverick, very energetic, and someone who really brings people with her. And then finally, here's the last of our characters. This one is called Dan Driven. This guy is guy or woman. Of course, there's no gender difference between these. I'm sure you recognize as many men and women for each of these profiles. But this is someone who likes an objective and likes to just go ahead and achieve it and drag his team kicking and screaming if he needs to get them to a goal. This is the sort of person that won't shirk any extra responsibility. In fact, they love additional responsibility. They love nothing more than being put on the spot, because they love that feeling of being the hero who delivered against the odds. The trouble is with this person, if they're put under stress, they won't be realistic with themselves about their ability to deliver. They just assume that they'll be able to do it, and when the wheels come off, it can be relatively spectacular. So those are four people, and what I want you to do is I want you to spend a couple of minutes just getting a little bit inside the minds of those people, if you would. So what I'd like you to do is to talk to your neighbours again, and I'm going to ask you each to think about one of these groups. So from the middle of the room and the front half, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, let's say 7 rows, the front 7 rows to that side of the room, I'm going to ask you to discuss being Claire conscientious. So bring that person to life. Think about what their current job is, where they might go on holiday, what drives them mad at work, things like that, okay? So you're going to talk about Claire conscientious. You guys are going to talk about Tommy Team. So up to 7 rows back, this side, please, you talk about Tommy Team. The back 6 rows, please, I want you to talk about Mary Maverick. And to my left, the back 6 rows, I want you to talk about Dan. Okay, so you're going to talk to your neighbours, and I want you to pull out some things, some insights about those people that are really interesting. So what drives them mad at work, what their job is, where they might go on holiday, anything to bring their personality together. Go ahead and chat about them now, please. Okay, so let's go a little bit into the mind of our audience, just to understand them a little bit better. So I'm going to start with Claire Conscientious. If I can go on the handheld microphone, please. I'm going to start with Claire Conscientious. So where does Claire go on holiday? Tell us Claire's holiday. Anyone think about that? Europe, thank you. More specific? Tuscany, very good. Yeah, goes to Tuscany. What drives Claire mad at work? Just tell me again.
Not be able to meet timescales.
Right.
Time.
Yeah, not being able to meet timescales, absolutely. And so if someone sets an unrealistic timescale for her, that will absolutely drive her mad. Okay, so that's Claire. Let's go on to Tommy now. Who was looking at Tommy? Tell me, what job does Tommy do? What would his job description be? Or tell me a little bit about him. You reckon he's
in HR.
Okay, great, thank you. He's in HR. What did you talk about with Tommy?
We thought he was maybe the person that organised all the social events, the going out and things like that.
Yeah, he would. He'd organise all the social events, but he's so creative and bad at detail that he'd give everyone the wrong start time. But everyone loves Tommy anyway, so they'd forgive him. Okay, and let's go on to Mary Maverick. Tell me a little bit about Mary Maverick. What's her job? Did anyone cover that? Did you cover where she went on holiday? How did you get to know her? Yeah.
She goes travelling, not holidaying, in Southeast Asia.
Right, she goes, of course she does. She goes travelling, not holidaying. She's breaking those generational divides, maybe. Okay, and then let's finish off quickly with Dan Driven. So who are the people who are looking at Dan Driven? Tell us a little bit about Dan. Who wants to share what they said about Dan? This group?
Probably go snowboarding and Whistler.
He probably goes snowboarding in Whistler, and he's never actually been snowboarding before, and he goes with a whole load of absolute export snowboarders, and he's the one with the knee that's sore at the end of it. Who else covered Dan? Did you talk about Dan? Did you guys talk about Dan? No, I didn't talk about anything, Chris. Oh, here we go.
We also said that he went on skiing holidays, and that he's probably not the best listener.
Yeah, he likes his own ideas. He's not necessarily the best listener. Absolutely. Okay, so those are our 4 characters. And do you all recognise something of these people in the people that you work with, in the people that come to your events, in the people who come and visit your venues? If coffee wasn't out on time, this person would know that, wouldn't they? They'd point that out to you, make that quite painful. And if you got to the sort of Thursday and the event was on the Friday and you'd been promised a detailed logistical run-through of everything that they wanted from you by the end of the day, promise, and you knew that you were dealing with one of these people, you'd be quite worried by now, wouldn't you? Yeah, they don't necessarily do detail, although they're really good at big picture stuff. And if you're trying to negotiate, or rather the client is trying to negotiate with you a good price, it's probably quite difficult to do that with Mary, I imagine. She's going to make you feel really, really bad about sticking to that original price, and she's going to tell you about the fantastic opportunities to work with her brand going forward. So there's the people. And what we're going to do is we're going to analyze what those people think about the agenda that we've created, because when those BlackBerry managers come together, there'll be some of all of them, right? There'll be some Claire Conscientious, there'll be some Toby Teams, some Marys and some Dans. So what do they think about the agenda that we put together? So what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to click on the vote button on your iPad. So this time you're going to click on the vote button, and then no cheating. You're going to click on the vote button and you're going to go into your own character. Okay, I want you to stay in character, not the one that you think you are. So if you're Claire Conscientious, you're going to tap top left, top right for Tommy Team and so on. And you're going to tell us what you think of our agenda. And really all I want you to do, if Stephen you can show us one of these, all I want you to do is I want you to say which of these agenda items do you least like? Which one least floats your boat, okay? So just pick one of those and say, which one of those do I least like? That is the one that Mary would be most bored by or turned off by or whatever. And then when you've voted, you're going to tap on submit. I'm going to give you a minute to do that. You've got the vote on your screens. I'm going to give you a minute to do that, so no need to rush. But in the meantime, as you're doing that, I'll just share a few lessons from that research that I talked about. So if we can go back to the PowerPoint, please. So we've got these different characters, and I hope you find that model useful. And it does just show that if you take what we were hearing about this morning with the generational differences between the way some people view technology, the way some people view information, the things that people believe, depending on their generations, you also then have to overlay the fact that when you're designing an experience or an event for people, you also have to appeal to these different character types, and it's pretty quickly clear that you can't appeal to all people all of the time. Now, what we do know about what people think about events, we've learnt from doing a piece of research, which we now did a few years ago, and you're very welcome to either email me for a copy afterwards if you're interested. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some research that we did, and we called it Inside the Mind of the Delegate, and we did nothing more complicated than take all of the end of session evaluations that we'd had submitted through our technology, and we just analysed it. We just grouped all of those responses and tried to make sense of them. And we learned some interesting things. And the first thing that we noticed was it is almost impossible to design an agenda because that appeals to everyone equally. These quotes are kind of representative. There's much more detail behind this, but this is in the same event, okay? So this is taking feedback from the same event. We got these 4 pieces of feedback on how to improve the event, okay? Give us more real case studies to bring your ideas to life, okay? Don't give me 3 slides and then move on. I want more case studies to concretely bring your ideas to life, okay? That's going to take time, and it's probably going to take time in a presentation. The second one is, they say, cut out the weak content. We want more depth and less breadth. Well, if you're trying to design a conference and you've got people who are clamoring to add their presentation to the list of presentations going on, this is really hard to achieve because you're going to have to turn some people away, and some people are going to be very senior in the organizations that they represent. Some people don't want case studies and they don't want more depth, less breadth. They want to give some opportunity to explore important issues. Don't tell me the answer, I want to tell you the answer. I'm here, I'm a successful person, I'm good at my job, and my views can help you to solve this problem. And I recognize in this feedback a little bit about the Gen Y, the one who came in and wants to tell the CEO right now how to improve the company. So you can't do that through presentation, you've got to do that through working with the audience. How do you fit it in with the other 2? And then finally, someone who doesn't want any structure, or at least they want less structure. Give us time and space outside of the conference hall so that we can get on and think about and process the stuff that we're hearing. Possibly talk in informal groups, in networking, in coffee areas and so on. And you can see that trying to accommodate this sort of stuff can be very challenging. But at the same time, if you can accommodate it, it gives you a real lens to think about the different challenges that your clients might face when they're bringing an event to your venues. Let me try some of the more flippant ones, okay? Because not everything was serious. And I'm going to pick out 4 of my absolute favorites from these 10,000 completed end-of-session evaluations. okay? Want more vegetarian options? It's fair enough, but you will always get feedback. And I have to say that I feel sorry for people who do logistics, catering and venue, because do you know what? It's much easier for a delegate to criticise that stuff than it is to criticise the content. So actually, when you look at the feedback, it's all around the venue, and you can get 99 things out of 100 right, and then the one thing that slipped up is the thing that they'll remember. And I think the one trick is, if you're gathering feedback, or you get the opportunity to ask your clients to design the evaluation, give delegates an opportunity to say what they liked as well as what they didn't like, because otherwise the only stuff you've got is stuff like that. And I imagine in some of your shoes, after a while, that gets a bit depressing because you put on a fantastic event for them. Here's the second one, softer pillows. I think there were 97 softer pillows and 88 harder pillows. You know, you can't please everyone, unfortunately. But then it got more serious. There was a dog barking outside my open window all night, okay? So close the window, no? And then finally, I really don't know what you're supposed to do about this one. I mean, really, what are you supposed to do about that? Okay, so let's draw this together. I'm running towards the end of my time. I've got a few minutes left, and I do just want to do a last couple of things with you. So the first thing I'd like to do is to show you the results for the vote that you completed just a moment ago. So Stephen, if you can, are you okay to do that, or do we need a couple of minutes more? 10 seconds more, and that really is 10 seconds when I'm working with Stephen. Okay, fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the results of the votes that you completed, and you're going to see two things. First of all, you're going to see the thing that people hated the most, i.e. which of those 4 activities did Mary hate most, which of those 4 activities did Dan hate most, and so on. And also you're going to see the degree of alignment between you as the quarter who voted on it. So let's look at, first of all, what people disliked most. Okay, so Claire Conscientious disliked most the idea of having input from young people. Dan Driven hated the idea most of an issues workshop. Interesting. I suppose you could read that 2 ways. Either he's got the answer, so he doesn't want to hear anyone else's answers, or he doesn't want to talk about issues, he wants to get on with solutions. Maybe a couple of ways that you might have interpreted that. Actually, Tommy Team wasn't very warm on the issues workshop either, and I suspect that Tommy, just give me a nod if I'm on the right lines here, Tommy might feel that this is all very negative and critical, and it just gets a little bit close to the bone. Is that fair? Okay, and then Mary doesn't like an issues workshop either. So let's take the issues workshop off, and let's do the others. But let's see how aligned you were anyway. So Stephen, if you can show us that. Okay, so if we look at those, Dan Driven, you basically, if it's filled in, it means you all kind of agreed, and if it's very spread out, it means you all kind of differed. So Dan Driven, you all agreed that you really didn't like the issues workshop. It looks like Claire and Mary, by contrast, were a bit more split. So which was the other one? Let's start with Mary's. Where were Mary's? They're over there. Just call it out. Which was the one that you thought, if you didn't think it was an issues workshop, which was the other one you weren't very hot on? Case studies. Okay, case studies. A little bit plodding. Not quite inspirational enough, possibly. How about Claire? You weren't all aligned on that. Where's Claire? She's over here, isn't she? So what was the other one that you chose there if you didn't choose input from young people? Just call it out for me. Innovation. Yeah, no, fair enough. She might struggle with where is all that going. It's a little bit out there, not down to the practicalities. I imagine that Claire would love the case studies, no? You had no problems with the case studies. Okay, so when you're designing your agendas, I'll leave you with a couple of thoughts. I did have a quick activity to get us to maybe share some ideas for solving this, but I think I might just wrap up to get us back on time. So when you're designing agendas for clients, you need to make sure that you've got enough of a mix of these different types of activities, so you've got a hook for some of the delegates. We know from the research you're never going to please all of the delegates all the time, but if everything about the event is completely against the way that Tommy Team would like to participate in an event, or Dan Driven would like to participate in an event, you are going to lose them. And depending on the character, if you lose them completely, what they start to do when they're alienated from the event is they start to take other people with them. So you need to make sure that the events are varied in order to have enough in there for all of your different characters all of the time. The other thing I think that's important is to recognise that in life, these people are going to have to get along and work as a team. And one of the big things that excites me about live events, we've talked about the power of experiences already today, but for me, the power of events is sometimes it gives a safe place for these different people to interact with each other. So it's really good, actually, to have a little bit of discomfort. Claire needs to feel a little bit of the, where's this all going? Because if she never feels that, then she'll never understand what really floats Mary's boat. Dan could do with a little bit of time, maybe just listening to Tommy and understand why a direct command that he gave didn't get done. It wasn't because someone was useless. It's just because sometimes people are more concerned with the dynamics of the team and the long-term damage to the team of trying to pursue a particular option. So an event provides a really unique way of bringing these people together to achieve a sharing of perspectives that maybe doesn't work with email and maybe I would say doesn't even work with Twitter and other channels too. Thankfully for all of us who work in the events business. So why don't we finish off by just looking at some of those ideas that we came up with at the beginning, the strangest things that happened to us at an event. I could see that went a little bit viral. We left it open a little bit long, so I'm a bit scared, but I think the first quarter, very rude comments about me as well, but I think the first quarter of them we can show. So, no, they weren't that bad. The first quarter of them, I think, are good for public consumption. So maybe we can show those now. Okay, I had to stand in for Mr. Toyota, boss of Toyota. That must have been fun. I got locked in a toilet stall when the lock broke today. There were quite a lot of ones about today. Someone was complaining about getting up to the second floor, and there was one that I noticed, which was I bit into a skewer of chicken and found out it was fish. I thought that was great. I got mistaken for someone else. What else have we got? Entered the wrong conference within a convention centre. Fantastic. I lost my shoe. We had to hug each other. Should we do that now? No. Okay, the fire alarm went off and we had to evacuate. I bet that's happened. And number 22, can we just stop it there, please? Number 22. That clearly was not today's event. You're giving me back my iPads. Very good. Okay, well, listen, I really appreciate your input, your participation. I do facilitation as a job, and it's pretty lonely if no one offers anything back. So thank you very much for participating in my session. I hope I've given you some sessions, and I hope here you got some real pearls of wisdom to take back to your works. And with that, I'll hand it back to our facilitator. Thank you very much.